Hello everyone and welcome back to Football Manager 2018 and the second part of this experiment where we're taking a look at what would happen if Edinburgh City were given £1 billion in the Scottish leagues. Now last time we went 10 years into the future and as you can see a strange experiment up to now because they did manage to get promoted in 18-19 and then again in 2021. Peaking at 4th place in the Championship, but were relegated the next season, struggled down there a little bit, and finally got promoted at the end of last season, finishing 3rd, which means they're back in the Championship for another season. Now, their financial situation when we left off had dropped massively to about £500 million, a huge amount of money disappearing despite virtually no transfers coming in. They've still got a big transfer budget and wage budget. You guys clarified that there's no financial fair play. So there's no reason for them not to spend money other than maybe their reputation can't attract any kind of player that would command a transfer fee. So we're going to go forward 10 more years. I'm not going to mess with anything for now because they've still got the money and they might yet just rise up the league. So in today's part, we're just going to go forward another 10 years, see what happens. And then depending on what you guys say, I might bump up the reputation in the next experiment, maybe to the level of Celtic, so that they've got an even keel there to maybe sign big players with the money they've got. But let me know what you think down in the comments below and drop a like on the video if you are enjoying this experiment. But let's go forward 10 years into the future and see how they're getting on. Well, we are 10 years into the future. This is where we left off last time. If we go 1 year forward, then you can see that their time in the Championship got off to a really poor start. Did well in the Betfred Cup, and through in the Scottish Cup 3rd round, 4th round as well. A little renaissance here at the end of the season where they did start to perform quite well. But were beaten by Dundee in the 5th round there. Made it to the playoffs in their first season back. Beat St Mirren 3-1 and 2-0, but then struggled against Falkirk, losing 3-0 on aggregate and getting knocked out at the playoff stage. Now the next season, in the Betfred Cup, they struggled right off from the off. They did a little bit better at the start of the season, but still way too many defeats. Drew in the Scottish Cup 4th round and managed to get past Arbroath in the replay. Drew with Livingston in the 5th round and went through on penalties as well to make it to the quarterfinals, but were unable to beat Aberdeen, one of the big names in Scottish football. They made the playoffs for another season and got through on penalties against Ayr United, I think it's Ayr United, and Wallace Duffy with the 80th minute equaliser allowing them to do that. But they were beaten 2-1 on penalties despite winning away from home. They needed another goal to go through. It wasn't enough, and so they were knocked out by Falkirk yet again. The following season, still in the Championship, struggling in the Irn-Bru Cup, going out in the 1st round, won in the Scottish Cup 4th round against Inverness Calais Thistle, beat Queen of the South 2-1 to make the quarterfinals for another year, but Motherwell knocking them out this time, a late goal there at home, taking them out, and their league form struggled, but they did make the playoffs once more, somehow managed to get through against Queen of the South, nearly threw it away in the second leg there, but were unable to get past Hamilton. This is a stage that they are faltering at. And then the following season, it has taken them far too long to get promoted, but this is a good way to start the season. Through the Irn-Bru Cup quarter-final against Brecon, and then in the Scottish Cup, knocked out by Falkirk, who are becoming their nemesis at the moment. Through in the semi-final of the Irn-Bru Cup, and beat Ross County 3-0 to win the Irn-Bru Cup final there. I'm just going to have a look at the past winners of this competition. And as you can see, they are listed here 20, 30, 31, alongside some decent names in Scottish football. So certainly establishing themselves more as a team in Scotland to be reckoned with. But while they're in the Championship, they've still got a long, long way to go. But they do at least have some proper silverware in their locker, and they may well have got promoted because this is a good season and they're not in the playoffs, so I think they got automatic promotion. And as you can see, they're in the Premiership. Not only did they win a competition, they also got promotion to the highest tier in Scottish football, so they have finally made the promised land. And they started off with a 2-1 defeat, but they did manage to get some wins after that, so maybe they weren't relegated this season. Drawing with Rangers as well. Lost to Celtic though out of the Betfred Cup quarter-final. Huge losing streak here as well, including 3-0 to Celtic and to Rangers as well. Out of the Scottish Cup in the 4th round. A lot of defeats here. And in the relegation group, it looks like they managed to do enough with the relegation playoff final against Inverness Cali Thistle. They managed to win 5-1 on aggregate and stay in the Premiership for another season. Their Betfred Cup got off very well until they were beaten by Rangers 2-1. Again, struggling in the league, losing to Celtic an awful lot. Did beat Rangers 1-0 at Ibrox as well, so good performance there. Through in the Scottish Cup third round as well. But before being knocked out by Aberdeen, they did manage to beat them 2-1 in the league and get some revenge in the relegation group again, but managed to beat Queen of the South 3-1 on aggregate. The following season, a little bit better performance at the start of the league this time. Through in the Scottish Cup fourth round and in the fifth round, but lost to Motherwell in the quarterfinal. Still hitting that relegation group, but I think they were safe before, or needing a playoff really, which is a sign of improvement, albeit a very slow one. Another season here, we're getting towards the end, struggling in the Betfred Cup, or making it to the semi-final actually before losing out in the Scottish Cup fourth round. Relegation group beckoned again, but they seem to avoid that playoff. Again, out in the second round of the Betfred Cup to Celtic this time. Managed to do well in the Scottish Cup before being knocked out by Hibs in a replay. And in the relegation... Oh no, they're in the Championship group this time. And they beat Celtic 2-1. That is interesting. We'll have to have a look how they managed to do that season. But they beat Celtic there in the Championship group. That is a sure sign of progress. And then once more, struggling in the Betfred Cup second round only, but managed to make it to the quarterfinal again and force a replay, but it wasn't enough. And once more in that Championship group where they actually beat Celtic. So let's jump over now and have a look at that Premier League or Premiership table in Scottish football, because if they are finally beating Celtic, they beat them earlier in the season as well, 3-2. There's that chance that they might have done enough. But if we have a look at the league table, you can see Celtic finishing on 73 points, Edinburgh down on just 56, but they may well have qualified for Europe on that evidence. And you can see that this Ladbrokes Premier League is bouncing around a lot. If it was high as 10th, now down to 13th. If we look at the previous season league table, if it will let us, there we go, then you can see they finished 5th the season before as well. So they are finishing in these kind of European positions, but not really doing enough. Is this a European position? I'm not sure what's going on there, because that's previous season. They didn't qualify for Europe, as far as I'm aware. The season before that, obviously in the bottom half, struggling a little bit in 9th place, 11th place there, so close to the bottom of the league. But they have managed to just finish off the foot of the table every step of the way. And yeah, not qualifying for Europe this time, despite finishing 5th, which is unusual. Maybe it's because their stadium is not up to scratch. That would not surprise me. They've managed to expand it to 4,654. And you can see this little rise here up the league table is looking a little bit more consistent. If we view their facilities, they are struggling. The stadium condition is only good. And they're due to move to the 15,000 capacity Edinburgh City Stadium next season. So they've got one more season here where they can't be in Europe before they do eventually move to this much larger capacity stadium. And maybe that is what is holding them back, is that their facilities are just not good enough. They've got a good national reputation now, and they do still have rich finances, although I'm not entirely convinced of what point that is at. You see their reputation now much higher, up there with the big Scottish teams. Professional status, and still got a couple of $100 million in the bank that they could spend, so who knows what they'll do with that. If we have a quick look at the facilities as well, and you can see that their stadium very poor, but obviously they've got the move coming. The training and youth facilities massively improved, which will help them out, but still some way to go before they could become a European force. If we have a quick look at their transfer history over the past few seasons, start off where we left off last time, the 27-28 season, barely a penny spent, nothing the season after, 91k after that, and then finally we see 375k being spent, and then 4 million. I think this is when they got promoted to the Premiership, and they did actually sign a player for over £1 million, Grant Clarkson from Sunderland. 2.1 the following season, 1.6 after that, 3.9 a new club record, and then 10.75 million being spent. Players coming in from English football, but also taking players from the likes of Hearts as well. 10 million spent the following season as well. 3.1 million on Anderson Brown from Rotherham. So not going for the top caliber players, but they are at least spending a little bit more money. But we've still got some way to go really, given how much cash they have available. They are not spending an awful lot. And if we just have a quick look at their squad, you can see there's not too many players with a high value here. You've got Ogun Sanya, the left winger, who is their most expensive player, Nigerian. If we look at his career stats, you can see getting that 7-point rating, joined from Ipswich in the Championship for 5.5 million, and he is chipping in with goals and the like, but still some way to go for them before they really hit that top level. And I don't think they're necessarily competing with Celtic financially. But if we have a quick look at the transfers for the entire league, then you can see Celtic still dominating at the top of this. Edinburgh are second though, really, and they are breathing down the neck of Celtic, but some ways still to go before they can surpass Celtic financially. So there is a battle brewing here. It'll be interesting to see how it develops. They still got 200 million in the bank, so I'm not sure whether to bump up their cash or not. Obviously, they will need a cash infusion if they ever make it into Europe. Otherwise, they will never progress. But the new stadium will help them massively in terms of being financially viable. So let me know in the comments what you'd like to see happen. Make sure to drop a like on the video as well if you enjoyed this series so far. And subscribe to the channel for the next part in a couple of days' time. But until next time, see ya!